Morning, everybody. Morning to you as well, Nipwa. We just had possibly like the best announcements I've ever heard in my life, and lots of it had to do with you, Nipwa. We just remembered God's faithfulness to us as a church. And a little bit later on this morning, we're going to be talking about hope. And while it's not actually part of the sermon, I really want to notice that one of the best ways that you can have hope for the future is just to remember what God did for you in the past. So let's move towards talking about this series. You must know, if you know me, that I really like what most of you maybe don't think of as clever word plays, but maybe like just sort of obnoxious and obvious word plays. But this series, maybe it'll win you over. Adventageous. No? Slowly being won over. Yes. Maybe you don't understand. Is it that you don't understand? Maybe you don't understand. I'll explain. So Advent is like another word for Christmas. They're waiting for something. Advent, it's a posture of waiting. And there are 4 themes during the Advent season traditionally: hope, love, joy, and peace. And the idea with Adventageous is those things in your life that come at Christmas in some sense, if you were to have them, let's say the other 364 days a year, if it wasn't just the most wonderful time of the year, but rather the things that make it the most wonderful time of the year were able to be there the rest of the year, then you'd be at a distinct advantage, wouldn't you, over people who do not have those things. Thus, the term advantageous. All right. Good. So that's our next 4 weeks, looking to make these things that come at Christmas last the rest of the year. And to do that, we're going to follow the same pattern, sort of the small to big pattern. So stuff at Christmas, small, rest of the year, big. We're going to look at a Christmas story or a Christmas text in the Bible, small, and then we're going to fast forward a few decades and see how that theme that started at Christmas actually ends up growing and how they understood it later on. So we're going to look at a different part of the Bible that happens a little bit farther along. So the series is going to go from small, Christmas, one day, to big, your whole life. And this day, we're going to talk about hope. And it's appropriate that we start with hope because hope includes the other 3. I don't know what you're hoping for deep down, but if you're hoping for something that doesn't include love, joy, or peace, that would be weird. I'm hoping for loneliness, I'm hoping for conflict, and I'm hoping for misery. I mean, we just don't do that, right? We may end up there, we may contribute to that, but none of us are hoping for that. I would suggest that our brightest hopes and our most brilliant hopes are those hopes that contain love, joy, and peace. So this first sermon is setting us up to get those components of hope later on. To do that, though, I want us to start with something that's maybe easier to understand and digest because we're going to get into understanding a new kind of hope, a distinctly Christian hope, and for some of you it'll be a new idea. So let's start with what we all know of. We know about hopes at Christmas. It started when you're a little kid. You are hoping for a certain present. I know what my kids are hoping for. They know what I'm hoping for. I know what I got them and how disappointed they'll be, but we understand this dynamic. Now, imagine that you're hoping for something that maybe all of us can at least understand. We can appreciate the need for a warm coat in this climate. You're hoping for a warm coat, but also a little bit stylish, and you'd really like something that maybe has a bit of a name, right? So maybe let's go with North Face. You're hoping for a nice North Face coat, something in like the $500 to $700 range from somebody. You're really excited about that. You've read about it. You know what the down fill numbers are. You know what the thread count is. You just imagine yourself standing in the wind and feeling nothing except warmth. And so the day comes, the present comes, you open it up, and it is in fact a coat, what you were hoping for, but it is not a North Face coat. So you do what we all do. At a certain age, you understand, you just pretend it's the greatest thing ever. And you're so happy about it, but it finds its way into your closet. You're not too into it, and you start wondering how you can get that thing later on your own, sort of thing. But what you haven't noticed is what the label of the new coat is. It's a label you've never heard of, The label is 66 degrees north. And one Sunday, it's particularly cold, and you're like, well, maybe I'll wear this stupid thing. I need to go somewhere. You grab it, and you thought, that's a weird label. I've never actually even really thought about that. And absent-mindedly, you punch it into your phone, and you start to read about this particular coat that you have never heard of. And pretty quickly, as you read about it, and then you look at it a little bit more closely, you start to understand that this coat is not only meeting your hopes, it is greatly exceeding your hopes. That Route 66 North is an Icelandic brand that is basically for their coast guards and their fishermen. And that it has been put together meticulously, has a lifetime warranty, and it cost the person who got it for you about $2,000. And suddenly what you're hoping for didn't quite seem as disappointing when you didn't get it, because what you got was what you hoped for and more. It just took a while for it to dawn on you. So I set that up this morning because we're going to introduce a hope. And I expect for a lot of us, it's going to initially be disappointing. Because I'm going to try and build it up with like as much hype as I can, and then we'll be ready for this big unveil, and you'll go, oh, huh. Some of you, it will dawn on you before the end of the morning. The rest of you will need some time to continue to dive into it through this series and beyond. But promise me, at some point, it will click with you, and you will find a hope like you've never, ever imagined could even be found. Sometimes it takes hope a while to dawn on us. What we're hoping for isn't necessarily what God's bringing our way, but what He's bringing our way is going to exceed that. That's exactly what happened with Jesus. Christmas time. Israel as a nation is basically waiting for 3 or 4 things. This is what they're hoping for. Israel as a nation, so Mary, let's take Mary, Jesus' mom, would have this on the brain as something she's hoping for. These would be the longings of her heart. She's longing for liberation from oppression. They're a marginalized people. They're disadvantaged in every way, second-class citizens. She wants that to change. She's hoping for that to change. She wants her land back. Her great-great-grandpas, or however far back, her land back, because she's really hungry, and when you don't have land, you can't feed yourself, especially if you're oppressed. She wants the temple to be rebuilt, and she wants people to follow Jesus' laws, or pardon me, God's laws. Jesus is still coming. These are the hopes of her heart. And we can see that those are her hopes because when she's told that the Messiah is coming, her song lines up with, oh wow, now these hopes are going to be realized. Food, land, oppression, gone, freedom, and that kind of thing. Let's just look at a snippet of what she says, what she sings after the angel comes in Luke 1. Halfway through her song, the Magnificat, it's called, she says, His mercy extends to those who fear Him from generation to generation. He is God. He has performed mighty deeds with His arm. He's scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He's brought down rulers from their thrones, the oppressors, and He's lifted up the humble, the oppressed. He has filled the hungry with good things, but He sent the rich away empty. This is her anticipating what this baby in her womb is going to be doing. He's helped His servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, just as He promised our ancestors. Mary's hopes were the hopes that were placed on Jesus that initially people found disappointing when He didn't fulfill them. There's this scene after Jesus' resurrection where He's walking on the road with a couple people who don't recognize Him. And they're talking about His death. And they say, we had hoped He would be the one who was going to redeem Israel. So Jesus comes, He meets them, they've got all these hopes, He lives among them, and then He dies and their hopes are dashed. Sometimes when we come to Jesus with the wrong hopes, our hopes are dashed, but the key is to stick around long enough to see what He actually is going to bring. And when they encountered the resurrection Christ and they started to see this is different than we thought, yeah, we're maybe still oppressed politically, but there's things inside of us that oppress us as well. Our inability to change how we feel. You can be free politically and still be miserable inside, right? We know that. We're not oppressed by government, but that doesn't necessarily change our misery level. Jesus brings joy. They may not get a new temple, but they get to become temples. They used to go to the temple to experience the Spirit of God in its fullness, and now that same Spirit is in them. You see how Jesus takes the little hopes that are just like so small, but we think are so big, and then he comes along and he says, no, how about this? And so for some of us, you just need to stick around and watch and let it dawn on you how much greater this hope is. One of the people who stuck around and who saw it dawn on them was the closest thing Jesus had to a right-hand man. So that would have been Peter. And about 30 years after Jesus' death and resurrection, Peter, now in his 50s, writes a book that's called 1 Peter. Cleverly named. It's the first book that he wrote. Letter that he's writing to these suffering Christians. And in this first chapter, he starts to talk about a new kind of hope. And it's this hope that I want him to help us see, and it's this hope that I think when it dawns on you, everything changes. We'll jump into his book. So we've gone from the little story of Christmas, now 30 years later, what does this hope actually look like in the life of somebody who's been doing it for 30 years? Verse 3 of 1 Peter 1 says, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he's given us new birth into a living hope." That's the phrase I want us to remember. The rest of the morning is basically going to be in and around that phrase, living hope. What is a living hope? Because it's different than other hopes. Other hopes would be dead hopes. Other hopes would be dying or disposable hopes. And then there's this new category. There's a living hope. New birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you, who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of salvation that's ready to be revealed in the last time. And we'll stop there. We'll come back at verse 6. Can I get you to spool back to verse 3? Because there's 3 words in verse 3. Not just living hope, that's 2 words. There's 3 words a little later on that help us move towards what a living hope actually is. In this sort of convoluted passage, it takes a while to make sense of. Peter tells us, first of all, what the living hope isn't. It is, let's go to the next one. It is not perishing, verse 4. It's not perishing, it's not spoiling, and it's not fading. 3 words. Perish, spoil, and fade. So whatever this living hope is, it's not that. Now it looks at first glance like those words might be the same thing. But they actually, and they kind of are, but they've got nuances that help us understand how much what we're hoping for that we might think is living and active is not actually that way. It's more perishing, spoiling, or fading. So that word perish, that has to do with decay. There's a type of hope you can have in things that are decaying, or there's just some hope that doesn't make sense for you to have because you're decaying. I had an interesting moment last week. I broke my collarbone about a month ago, and so I have pills for my collarbone. And these pills come with documentation. Documentation that it turns out you need just the right light because the font is really small to read. So I'm holding this documentation about my pills, and without thinking about it, I do this gesture that you just know is a sign of bad things to come. I go like this. And I actually thought, I'm dying. I mean, maybe not dying, but this is definitely going in the wrong way, the wrong direction. You look at pictures of me in my teens and 20s and now, and it's like, the trajectory is all wrong. So some of the things that I'm hoping for are stupid to hope for because I'm dying. Well, sounds ridiculous, but it's true. So it would be cool for me someday, I kind of hope to do this, to get a restored version of the very first car I had that I liked. I had a 64 Nova, and I've seen some of them on eBay, and I think that would be kind of neat. sort of a harmless midlife crisis. It's not that expensive a thing. I can drive around and be nice, take my son around. Now, say I get that thing, I realize my hope, take really good care of it. It actually doesn't decay because I keep it in like a Jay Leno-esque garage with the right humidity, and except that, like, when am I going to not be able to drive it? Because at some point I won't be able to drive. When will I not be able to see it? Because at some point I won't be able to see it. Some of the things that we're hoping for are silly to hope for. They may be good things, but to place our hope in them is dumb because they're decaying. Living hope is not decaying. Spoil, second word. This has to do with like corruptible. So it's compromised in some sense what you're hoping for. So think about something you're hoping for, something I've hoped for, especially after you've been in a cold climate for a while. You get to go somewhere warm, right? Maybe you're going to Cuba, Mexico, something like that. It's really nice, it's fun, you get to go, you're on the beach, but it's compromised. It's compromised because you have the sense, if you're a thinking person, and most of us are, that I'm doing this on the back of somebody. Right? I'm trying to make myself better by leaving little shampoo bottles for somebody to keep, so the maid can have some shampoo. We were recently in Paris, and we hoped to see the Eiffel Tower. It was Acacia's birthday. It was amazing. We came around the corner. There it is, all lit up. But it's compromised. You have to weave your way around a bunch of Syrian refugees to get to where the view is. So I think, without being a total downer, because there's things that we need to enjoy, but thinking people just understand that things are compromised. Even an evening with your family, if it's in a season where things are going well husband, wife, going well parent, kid, we all know people where that's not the case. And so it flashes across our hearts, even just for a moment, this sadness about people who aren't able to enjoy some of this stuff. That's the corruptible side of it, that there's always a yeah, but to what we have our hope in. And then the last one, fading. That's like perennial. So this is an easy one, right? We had hoped that this thing we purchased would be really happy, make us happy, but go figure, it faded, and now I need to buy something new. So this living hope is not something that you have to keep generating. You don't have to keep chasing this and then chasing that and then chasing that. It's actually one thing, and it just keeps coming all on its own. So there is a living hope that is not perishing, spoiling, or fading. When I was a kid, I think it was imperishable, incorruptible, and undefiled was what I would have memorized in a Bible class at West Park in the old King James Version English. What a fantastic thing to have when you're forming thoughts about what to hope in, that there are things that are imperishable, incorruptible, and undefiled that are kept in heaven for me. Let me focus on those things. Let's keep reading. So we know what it's not, but we don't know what it is. Let's go to verse 5. We can read it a second time. Who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that's ready to be revealed in the last time. In all this you greatly rejoice. So this living hope is creating joy right now, even though for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. Now for context, he's writing to people who are having their home taken away, they're having their economic hardship for being Christian, and they're getting very close to an age when the persecution climaxes into some martyrdom and people on the arena floor with lions, that kind of thing. So things are heating up for them, but in the midst of that suffering, they're able to have joy. So whatever this living hope is, it actually gives you joy right now. It makes what you're going through right now not just worth enduring because of what's happening later, not just a reward, but it somehow gives you joy right now. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. In that verse is your living hope. Your living hope is the praise, glory, and honor that will come when Jesus is revealed. Now, you need to understand that which direction this is going. This is not, when Jesus is revealed, we will all look at him and give him praise, glory, and honor, though we will. In this text, what it's saying about your living hope is that when Jesus is revealed, the praise, glory, and honor comes in your direction. This praise, glory, and honor is for you. Commentators are almost unanimous on what the Greek text is getting at. There's the unveil. There's your hope. And there's the, oh, now we need to let it dawn on us why this is a good thing. Some of us, it'll be hard for it to dawn on us because we prefer dying hopes. It's because our dying hopes haven't turned into dead hopes yet. We still actually think the next thing will maybe do it. And we live in a culture that very much tells us these things. This is why there's an iPhone 10 instead of just like a 2. Because each one makes us progressively more happy. Right? So some of us are still content in that maybe there is just that magic purchase, that magic experience, that magic person. So we haven't recognized our dying hopes for being dying hopes. We're just continuing to chase that. And so we're hoping that what Jesus does is he comes along and he says, here's what you need to do to get that. Here's the direction for it. Instead of this weird thing about your living hope is what he's going to give you, glory, honor, and praise. But I want you to think, so that might be one reason. The other might be you have this false Christian humility that you shouldn't get those things. That's not true. And then another reason might be you just don't understand yourself. If you think of the moments in your life where you felt the most joy, are they not a little bit embarrassing? Because it was such a small thing, such a small amount of recognition, but boy, it felt good. And you actually remember winning like the gold medal in grade 11 high jump because you stood at the podium and everyone clapped. And you're like, oh yeah, glory, honor, praise. For me, I just generally think these are embarrassing, but we need to start with it so we can see how this could actually be an incredible reward, a living hope. So I went back to try and think about when I was like a dizzyingly happy moment. It's about a month ago, playing hockey. My second game back after sabbatical, and I made a move around the defenseman. It felt so fast. I'm sure it was so slow. I swept around, and I'm long and lanky, so I can put the puck way out here, and I held him off with my arm, and I swooped in. The goalie tried to poke check, and I flipped it over his shoulder. I don't think there was a happier person on the planet for about a minute as the bench cheered, and everyone gave me 5 and said, way to go, preacher, and the guys in the opposing team were nodding their heads, and if there had been fans, they would have been into it as well. And the honor and the praise and the recognition at 11:30 on a Thursday night made me the happiest man on the planet, however briefly. Then, because it's a dying hope and it's perishing, spoiling, and fading, I went to take the face-off, won the face-off, wound up in my end to do it all over again, tripped on the blue line, slid into the boards, and broke my collarbone. Because I'm decaying. I'm perishing. If I hadn't broke my collarbone, if I had come home and said to my kids, you should have seen this goal that I scored, it was amazing, they would say, oh, did the fans go wild? And my hope would have been compromised by the silliness of it. What kind of person gets that much joy out of playing a silly game at night? And I would have thought, yeah, this is kind of dumb. And then it would have faded, and if I wanted that again, I would have had to do it again and make it into something. That is a hope, faith, glory, praise, honor that's perishing, fading. Now you guys have the same thing, right? It's a retirement party for somebody you've worked with for a long time. Everybody says nice things about them. They get up to say nice things about their coworkers. And you've got this relaxed look on your face like, if he says something about me, that's cool. I've only been there for 30 years every step of the way. I remember this when his kids were born. I remember this, and you're just waiting. Just waiting. And then finally he says, you know what, who I'm going to miss you all, but there's one person I'm going to miss in a real special way. And starts to heap praise on you. And you go, oh, yes. However brief, but then you do the perishable, spoiling, fading thing, and you think, this is silly, really? Like, that meant that much to me, and it kind of gets taken away. Our baptisms are done interestingly in that way. It feels so good to be the person doing the baptizing because there's glory, praise, and honor coming your way because you've been instrumental in an important way in this person's life. And that is as it should be. We don't apologize for that stuff. Maybe you have trouble understanding how amazing it will feel to be praised, honored, and receive glory from Jesus because you just don't understand how good it already feels. In like the perishable form, in the spoiling form. Like, we didn't just get together one day and decide, hey, let's have awards for performance. Oh, it organically came out of being human. We thrive on recognition and this promise that there will be compliments, recognition, and honor coming your way. And nothing can take it away from you. Nothing can cheapen it, and it will never fade. That the best moments of your life on planet Earth, when you've been recognized, praised, and honored, are what's waiting for you forever. As you live in that, that changes everything. All right, we'll come back to that after their closing song. Right now I want to talk about how we get the living hope. So if living hope is the praise, glory, and honor you receive, how do you get it? Now, well, in the text, Peter's talking to people who are Christians and have the Holy Spirit in them, so that's part of it. This will be foreign to you if you haven't made a decision to follow Christ and have the Holy Spirit in you. So that's a good first step. But there's some people here who are like, yeah, this just doesn't, I'm not feeling this living hope at all, but I do follow and I do believe and I do try my best to obey. Let me offer this to you as a way to have this stuff in an advantageous way for the rest of your life. Okay? Here's what you need to do. You need to understand that you're always thinking about one of three things. Now, not front and center in your mind. Right, front and center in your mind, you're probably thinking about what's in front of you, like a transaction that you're buying something or an issue or something. But I'm talking about what's always on your mind, and how you can tell what that is what your mind wanders to when it has a free moment. What does your mind wander to? Whatever that is, will be one of three things. It will be a dead hope. So in sadness, your mind will wander to something that you've lost, something or someone that is not coming back, and you will align yourself with that in your spirit, and you will become a person who lives with dead hope. Or your mind might wander to a dying hope. What you might buy. Which version of this would be better to purchase? How can I finance this? I wonder if this, I wonder if that. It might wander to a person. Wonder how I can get them to notice me. I wonder how they can get them to do that for me. Whatever it might be, it's dying because we're perishable, fading, and spoiling. Or when your mind wanders, it might wander to your living hope. And if it does, then your living hope will actually begin living in you before Jesus is revealed. See, living hope isn't just something that lasts forever and doesn't fade and doesn't spoil. It actually comes into the present now. And you can train yourself to think about this all the time and have your heart aligned with it. Now, just think about how this will play out. Think about something like a marriage. Say you're fixated on dying hope, that hope will only come to me if I can fix this. Hope will only come to me if we can make this work. Hope will only come. There's a desperation there, a need from somebody or a need for performance of some sort on your part to make this work. And when it starts to go sideways, you'll get angry or scared because what you hoped for isn't happening. And that just spirals. But what if your hope is in what's coming for you and you already have a sense of who you are to Jesus of what you mean to Him. You live with a sense of how proud He is of you, and you understand that this situation in front of you isn't primarily, it's not going to change that. Well, you can actually relax and say the right things and be the right kind of person and be selfless because you were aligned with the proper hope. So these things aren't just about how we feel inside, because how we feel inside, it always gets outside. If you want to align yourself with the living hope, then probably a good place to start is take this 1 Peter passage, write it on a cue card, put it in your pocket, set an alarm on your watch, and every hour on the hour, read it to yourself, making it personal. And that sheer repetition will get you to a place where, when your mind wanders, it will wander to that. And that will be a sure sign that you have been aligned with truth and that you're beginning to live in this living hope. I'm going to turn it over to Neepawa there and to Stafford, and then I'll invite the band out here. We will sing together, and then I've got a few more thoughts on this before we close. Why don't we stand and let's sing. We talked about how, if we're honest, the best moments in our lives are probably the ones where, as silly as it might be, we receive glory, honor, and praise. But I want to go a little bit further and suggest that for many of us, we're discovering this living hope already, because the best moments in our lives are when we feel the glory, honor, and praise from a Father who's so proud of us. And doesn't, for so many of you, it happen when you decide, I'm going to suffer well? So yeah, I'm in Emerge, and it's probably going to be a 3-hour wait, but I'm going to make everybody's day, and I'm going to be kind. And you get the sense that the Father's looking at you going, that's my boy. And your heart swells inside of you, and you get a little bit of a sense of what this is going to feel like for eternity. Or you have like the worst year ever on the farm, and you decide, I'm going to take this stuff I can't sell, and at personal cost to myself, I'm going to bless the town. And you can't stop crying for joy. Or there's a particularly toxic person in your house church that you make extra time for, and they stay late into the night, and you're so tired, and when they leave, you feel the favor of the Father saying, that's my girl. You're starting to taste the living hope. You're starting to understand how it can motivate you today. May your minds drift to it because of your diligence in planting it in your heart. And then it can be yours 365 days a year. Peter finishes the passage this way, and it leads nicely into our closing prayer. He says, though you have not seen Him, this is Jesus, though you have not seen Him, you love Him. Feel the pride? Even though you do not see Him now, you believe in Him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. That's what happens when the living hope moves from, I can hardly wait, to I'm feeling it now, it's alive. For you are receiving right now the end result of your faith, the salvation of your soul. See, the salvation of your soul is not I get to go to heaven when I die. The salvation of your soul is love, joy, and hope and peace now. Let me bless you with a down benediction. May you, adopted and blessed by God, go with the power of the Holy Spirit as agents of justice and mercy. May you be attentive to the forgotten, fill the hungry with good things, and by your words and actions witness to the kingdom of God. May you be steadfast, unmovable, always working enthusiastically for the Lord, because nothing you do for Jesus is ever, ever, ever in vain. Grace and peace, everybody. Next week, let's aim for a surge in how many folks stick around for the potluck. Okay? Bring lots of food. Let's hang out together. Enjoy each other's company. The prayer team is here to help you process and pray through these things. Have a great Christmas season.